If you are on social media, chances are you've scrolled on a post or two about mental health. Even in today's movies and shows, it's easy to see the tides have turned on society's attitude towards the topic, with more support and awareness on these issues than years past.
Welcome to Healthy Living, Wellness and Prevention, Medical Innovation, the informed side of care. Welcome to Baptist Health Talk.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Johanna Gomez, for today's important discussion. A fourth of people worldwide suffer from mental illness. But because mental illnesses were often misunderstood and stigmatized, many people suffer in silence. Here to discuss mental health in today's generation and how that has changed, we're joined by two mental health experts, psychotherapist Manuela Rodriguez with Baptist Health and Dr. Sarah Spar Alexander, licensed psychologist and suicide prevention coordinator with Miami Veterans Affairs Hospital. Ladies, thank you both for being here. I cannot wait to talk to you about this topic that really a lot of us have been talking for a long time. But before we dive into today's subject, I want to remind our viewers to send in your questions and your comments in the comment section throughout this discussion. We are here for you, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have. So, Manuela, I'm going to go ahead and start with you. As we're aware, back in the day, it was a very taboo subject, right? A lot of people wouldn't talk about it. And now the storyline has changed. Really, it has made a dramatic change. It's kind of normalized. How has that shift even gotten us to this point?
Absolutely. Thank you for having us here and opening space for this conversation. I think it's important to see the shift into seeing individuals in a holistic way, that mental health is a part of our overall well-being and not just something that we're going to check off.
Yeah. Dr. Spar, though, generationally, there is, and culturally, let's just add that, there is a huge change and a huge shift, and not everybody is as open as it is. Do you still see that? And do you see generations and the attitudes, how mental illness and that topic could still be a little taboo?
Absolutely. Working with the VA, it's interesting. We'll have people as young as 18 years old, all the way through, we still have some World War II veterans that are still kicking at 100. Yeah. And so we see a huge difference. Obviously, the younger generation, they are more likely to ask for help. They're more likely to recognize that they're having some mental health problems, more so than the older generation. There's a lot more information that is out there. Social media can be a curse, but it also can be a blessing. It gets the information out there. So younger generations definitely are more likely to access care, but I did want to point out that it is pretty interesting. So our Vietnam veterans may have not received care for 40 or 50 years. Right. We did not really understand what post-traumatic stress disorder was back in the 60s and the 70s when they were getting out of the military, but they're now on Facebook. They're now on social media.
They're connected.
I know, it's amazing, but it's really cool because the younger generation, the older generation is now seeing that they are accessing care. And so I think that's encouraging a lot of our older veterans to actually access care themselves.
I'm curious about one thing that you just said now, because they also have a different way of seeing the world, and it's completely different from what they lived when they were younger. So do you see that, and also kind of what is going on? Because you can't relate to something that you really truly don't understand, and that's just a reality.
No, absolutely. And we didn't understand a lot of the mental health challenges that were faced by our combat veterans coming back. Post-traumatic stress disorder wasn't even a structured diagnosis when they were getting back from Vietnam. And so our understanding, our ability to treat these conditions has increased dramatically. We now know there are evidence-based psychotherapies that will help people recover. And that's the same with depression and anxiety, and not just within the VA, within the field of mental health in general. The research is out there now.
Speaking of research, there's a study, and I'm going to go ahead and read it to you so you can have it, that shows that young adults ages 18 to 25 had the highest rate of mental illness, while also showing the lowest rate of getting treatment. So the big question is why? What is going on? What is that gap that's our kids, our teenagers, our future? They're seeing this big risk, this highness in when it comes to mental illness. What's the problem?
Yeah, our teens and young adults, right, from 18 to 25, they're facing the curiosity of I want the support, and facing some of the obstacles of not having or thinking that there's not enough services or resources available, and they're turning to social media, And so it's telling them and having these conversations, opening up this space and saying there are resources, there is support out there, there are solutions. Who can you reach out to?
But I'm going to double down and say we didn't have social media in my generation, thankfully. Okay. So we kind of just dealt with it as it was. Is it because of social media and because everyone is talking about it a little too much? I'm just curious, could that be a problem with this age generation, 18 to 25, that they feel that they're more depressed and those numbers are so high?
I mean, they're talking about it more, right? And they're bringing more awareness, more advocacy.
Right, which we appreciate.
We do appreciate that. But it's also putting the precaution out there and saying, if you are reaching to social media for support, for advice, make sure that it's a valid, qualified individual, that they have the experience. There are resources such as teletherapy, trying if it's more, better or more appropriate in person. So it's trying to find something that's a fit for you, not what worked for everybody else or what worked for mom and dad or for what worked for grandma, right? Trying to find a fit for you.
Yeah. And as we also highlight the fact that this generation, right, there's a huge difference. There's also a difference between males and females. Yep. Men are from Mars, right? Women are from Venus. So there's also a big difference on how we handle stresses differently. Have you seen that, Dr. Spar? And what advice do you have for both sexes to kind of live together and kind of be more understanding of what we're going through?
Absolutely. I mean, definitely women will engage in mental health care a bit quicker than men will.
Okay.
Which is really unfortunate. I mean, I do have to say that men at higher rates decide to end their life by suicide than women. And I think a lot of times it's because they are keeping those feelings to themselves. The other thing is there's a difference in how they show their symptoms. Yep. Men tend to externalize, women tend to internalize. So a woman might be more likely to say, I'm sad, I'm depressed. They might be tearful, feel bad about themselves, express those feelings, whereas men are more likely to be angry and irritable and turn to substance abuse. So it's more of a challenge. It's definitely more of a challenge to recognize, wait, maybe this person isn't just super angry. Maybe this person is depressed. Yeah. Maybe this person is very anxious about something that's going on. So to be able to ask those questions and dig a little bit deeper than what's just shown on the surface.
Those are great signs. But now once we've spotted those signs, what's the next step after that?
It could be scary to have that conversation if it's with a spouse or a family member. We start seeing, right, these behaviors and how do I start this conversation? And if it comes from a place of curiosity and genuine concern for the individual, instead of pointing fingers or saying, look how mad you've been, look how, everything has changed, they're going to get a little bit defensive. So it's starting these conversations, healthy conversations with children, spouses, family members, and just trying to understand these symptoms just a little bit better.
Yeah. You just said the big elephant in the room. Kids!
Yes!
Oh, they're probably the hardest to kind of crack and get into, especially if you when you pick up your kids from school and you ask them a simple question, how was school? You get the same answer. Good. So I can't imagine how difficult it is wondering as a parent if your child is suffering through some mental illness or going through anything, either it's being bullied at school or not feeling secure, which that's something we all feel, right, as humans. Yeah. What can we do for our kids? What are some of the signs? Let's start off with signs with kids.
Some of the signs that we can see are change in academic performance. A lot of times we will see the grades going down or up. Right. It's something different that you think, oh, they're doing well. They're performing well. What are they stressed about? Well, there could be test anxiety. They could be nervous about performing, perfectionism. So now we see the other way. So I caution our viewers, our parents, our caregivers to say it could be changes one way or the other. And I think that it's either the child that's not going out anymore, withdrawing. Those are more common signs. But what if they're starting to hang out with their friends more and they're going out more? We think, oh my gosh, they're socializing. But are we still having healthy conversations with them about what does that look like for you? What are those friends that we are around? What are the conversations you're having with these friends, right? Even creating conversations when we see positive changes in them to support them and offer them.
But it's hard to get them to talk. And that is the reality. It is extremely hard. How do we do that?
It's by starting to connect with them on the things that they enjoy. What does their day-to-day look like? Sometimes sitting maybe on the, on the video
Games
on the
or watching
video
TV,
game,
yeah.
joining them, challenging them.
Okay.
Skimming through the phone together. That's something that I share with my daughter. She is not on social media. She does not have a device, but she's watching me. She sees my phone, right? And if I just move the phone away, am I creating a space for conversation? Instead, I say, let's look at this together. What do you see? What do I see? How do we see it differently, right? These are things that she's curious about, that she enjoys, right? But she doesn't have access to. So we're starting this conversation before eventually she's going to get the phone, right? She's going to be facing social media, and hopefully she will have these little voices, right, as she's looking through social media and making choices.
Yeah, and there's a lot of now movements where parents are saying we're not going to let our kids go on social media, kind of get away from the screen time. That in its own can be difficult, and a lot of parents might feel the challenge of that. How about taking something away that's been there for a while? That's also a big problem, right?
Because that is their life.
That's their life.
And they faced the pandemic just like we did, right? But they were given devices, iPads, phones. School was through the computer, through the laptop.
Everything.
Social gatherings were through the computer, through the phones. And now we're saying, oh, no, we shouldn't have done that too much. So maybe we can be more comfortable kind of creating that distance, or maybe, as adults, we're creating that distance, but the children are not filtering the same way. Their life will be over if they don't have the device. But we do have to create those boundaries. So I'm not saying don't put the boundaries, don't take the phone away, but we have to have a conversation about what that looks like. You are taking their life away.
Boundaries. Such a great conversation to have, not only with your kids, but with everyone. But you hear these horror stories also on how there are not so many signs that you don't pick up and see. And you hear, I never saw anything. I didn't pick up. That didn't happen. No slipping of good grades, bad grades, just kind of a great child. What do we do at that moment? What should we be aware of? Not only with our kids, but also with veterans, a loved one, anyone in our lives.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of signs that we wouldn't necessarily realize. Sleep is really... You look at all mental health issues, disruptions in sleep is one of the most common symptoms by far.
Wow.
Whether that's sleeping too little or sleeping too much. It could be on the other side of it. A lot of physical symptoms as well. We wouldn't necessarily think, like if someone says, I'm having a lot of tension in my neck and shoulders, a lot of stomach issues, headaches, lack of motivation, lack of energy. Those things could all be associated with their mood, with how that person is feeling as well. Definitely, as I mentioned before, with men, looking at the anger and the irritability, and women as well. When you have a lot going on, we tend to be a little bit more quick-tempered. Problems with concentration is another issue. I know for myself personally, that is definitely the one thing when I know that I have a little bit too much going on in my life, if I'm not able to keep a clear track in my mind, that's my first indicator. So looking at some of these more physical, like symptoms we would think would be more medical. The body, as you had mentioned before, the body is one. The health, your mental health, your physical health, biology, it's all related, for sure.
It is all connected.
They're all connected.
All right, we're going to get to some questions right now. So let's go ahead and take some questions from our viewers. This question is, when someone is going through mental issues, a lot of time it has an effect on the person's spouse, kids, and family in general. How can a family support alleviate the burden of getting the help you need when suffering with your mental health? That's a great one.
Yeah, and we see
both of you.
the ripple effect, right?
Yeah.
It's not just the individual, and a lot of times the parents might take the child and say, please fix my child, right? And we were talking about that as well, that we need the parents involved. So therapy might involve family members to be a part of the process, because that child, once the 45-minute session is over, returns to those parents, returns to those teachers, returns to those friends. So all of the village, like we like to say, the village has to be a part of that. And in therapy, you don't have to have all the village there. So I do want to make sure that that's clear, right? Not everybody has to come, but therapeutically, we bring in individuals into the session. So we'll bring in, hey, if mom was here, what would she say? Or if grandma was here, what would she say? To understand in that session how that impacts that individual.
Absolutely.
Would you like to add to that?
Yeah, no, the one thing that I would really just kind of emphasize is the role of listening. One of the reasons we have a job is because
you're great listeners.
Yeah, and because I think society as a whole, we tend to be thinking about what we're going to say next as opposed to thinking about what the person is saying. So being able to listen, non-judgmental, whether that's listening to your child, your spouse, your partner, your son, your daughter, being able to listen to hear what's going on. And this is hard, but refrain from advice giving initially.
Or fixing.
Yes.
There's a lot of that going on social media as well.
Oh, absolutely, because there is no quick fix. And honestly, just being able to share your feelings, getting those emotions off of you, it can be so incredibly healing in and of itself. So listen before you, start trying to fix the problem.
I love that you just said there's no quick fix, because I think we live in a society where everything is so fast. We just want to fix it right away.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
We're all to blame for that, right? We all have probably done that a little bit. Before I let you go, could it be that the increase that we see of the mental health talk have to do with the pandemic, or was this something that really started prior? A little bit of both.
I definitely think the pandemic, it didn't help the situation by any means. There's a lot of isolation that occurred during the pandemic, and a lot of loss, a lot of sickness, a lot of loss.
Absolutely.
And people weren't able to, the social
See their
patterns
family
completely
members.
changed.
There was so much uncertainty.
Very much so. And it was scary.
It was scary.
I mean, you all remember the early days of the pandemic, just being glued to the news and it can be very difficult. So I don't think it made it better. But I do think there's more awareness about mental health, which means that more people are going to be engaging in mental health, which in some ways would make somebody think, oh, we have worse mental health issues than we had before. Not necessarily. Maybe people are seeking treatment more, which is great.
We're talking about it more.
And I love the fact that we are talking about it. A final takeaway for any of us or for our viewers right now.
Yeah. One thing that I would just say, I want to remind everybody is that we do have a suicide prevention crisis line. It's a very easy number to remember, 988. And you don't have to be in crisis to call. If you feel like you need to talk to someone, it could be 2:00 in the morning. This is a resource for everybody. Get the help you need before it gets worse.
I am glad you're both in our village to help us get through anything that we need. Thank you so much for just starting off this great conversation with us and for teaching us and sharing all your insights. We wish you both the best of luck. To our audience, remember, viewers, be sure to hit that subscribe button on our channel right here to keep up with the latest health and wellness information and tips from our wonderful experts. Thank you so much for watching.
Find additional valuable health and wellness information on our resource blog at baptisthealth.net/news. And be sure to interact with us on our social media channels for live and upcoming events. Baptist Health Talk is brought to you by Baptist Health, the warmer side of care.